Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to Quran Precision. In this video, we're going to talk about the difference between the Seen and the Saad. The Seen and the Saad have a lot of similarities, and because of that, it can be hard to distinguish between the two, and it can be hard to pronounce the two sounds differently. Before we get into talking about the differences between these two letters, we first have to really understand the similarities between the two letters. First similarity is that these two sounds share the same articulation point or the same makhraj. The Saad and the Seen and also the Za come from the same place. So what happens is that the tip of the tongue touches the base of the lower central incisors. So that very tip of the tongue is going to hit the base of those bottom front two teeth. So in this picture, you can see that the very tip of the tongue is hitting against the base of these two teeth. Now, obviously, when you say the Seen and the Saad, your mouth is not going to be wide open like that. This is just to show you where the tip of your tongue should be. So the Seen and the Saad share the same articulation point. They also share a lot of characteristics. The Seen and the Saad are both whispered sounds. So there's no voice coming out with these two sounds. So for the Seen, s, it's all air, there's no voice. And for the Saad, same thing, s, all air, no voice. For both of these sounds, the sound can run on. So I can continue to say these two sounds until my breath runs out if I wanted to. S. And for Saad, s. I can keep going, okay? The Seen and the Saad are also both sounds that have this whistling quality or this hissing quality. S, s. There's this whistling sound happening there. So we just talked about how the Seen and the Saad come from the same exact place, and they both share all of these same characteristics. So what is actually different about these two sounds? What makes these two sounds different is some of their characteristics. So mainly we're going to look at what happens with the rest of the tongue. We talked about what the front of the tongue or what the tip of the tongue is doing, but what is the rest of the tongue doing? And that's going to be what's different between these two sounds. So for the Saad, the back of the tongue is elevated. So the back of the tongue lifts up. And for the Seen, the back of the tongue is lowered. So it doesn't lift up. For the Saad, the sound is imprisoned between the middle of the tongue and the roof of the mouth. And for the Seen, the sound is not imprisoned between the middle of the tongue and the roof of the mouth. So if we look at a picture of how these two sounds look when they're being produced, you really want to look at the shape of the tongue overall. So on the right side, you see the Saad, the back of the tongue is lifted, and the sound is going to come up, and it's going to kind of go up towards the roof of the mouth, getting kind of imprisoned here. So you should feel this like fullness in your mouth. You should feel that the sound gets a little bit imprisoned in the mouth. Versus the Seen, the back of the tongue is lowered, and when the sound comes through, it comes out with a little bit more ease. S. And the Saad sounds more like s. Okay. So all of that is a lot of words. It might not make any sense. All you have to know, whenever we talk about the back of the tongue being lifted or the sound feeling imprisoned, all that really means is that the sound is heavy. So for the Saad, that Saad sound is going to be heavy. S, s. And for the Seen, it's going to feel light. Now, how do we get that heaviness? It's by lifting the back of the tongue, and it's by imprisoning the sound in the mouth. And how do we get that lightness in the Seen? It's by lowering the tongue and not having that imprisoned feeling in the mouth. Okay, so all you need to know is that the Saad is heavy and the Seen is light. That's the main difference between these two sounds. All right, let's practice these two sounds. I'm going to say the sound. Listen to me saying it and then repeat after me. Focus on how it sounds. Focus on how it feels in your mouth. S, ص ص س س صي صي سي سي الص الص الس الس. Notice that when I say the Saad, that heaviness that we keep talking about doesn't happen with the lips. I'm not rounding my lips a lot to get that heaviness. I'm not saying sa, sa. I don't need to do that. All of that heaviness comes from the back of the tongue, lifting the back of the tongue and getting that imprisoned feeling in the mouth. Now let's look at some words. So on the right side, you're going to see a bunch of words that have a Saad in them, and on the left side, you're going to see a bunch of words that have a Sin in them. These two words on the right column and on the left column are exactly the same. The only difference is that one has a Saad and one has a Sin. All right? Listen and repeat after me. صاح صاح ساح ساح صعيد صعيد سعيد سعيد صيف صيف سيف سيف. All right, let's do some more words that have seen in them. Repeat. سفرة سفرة سرور سرور يسيرا يسيرا مسك مسك. Now let's do some words that have a Saad in them. صفا صفا صحفا صحفا بصيرا بصيرا عصف عصف. All right, so to recap, the Sin and the Saad have a lot of similarities. They come from the same articulation point and they share a lot of the same characteristics. And the differences between the Sin and the Saad is really just that the Sin is light and the Saad is heavy. All right, that's all I have for the differences between the Sin and the Saad. Thank you. If you liked this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. And if you're looking for more learning and practice, go to speechprecision.com to schedule your free pronunciation assessment. I'll be able to tell you exactly what you need to improve your Quran recitation and pronunciation.